All right, let's get into it. Today, we're all going to become data detectives. Yep, we're on a mission to find these incredible stories that are hiding right under our noses. Not in some secret file, but inside a simple list of numbers. So let's grab our virtual magnifying glass and take a look at our first piece of evidence.
Okay, so here's the scene. Just a jumble of numbers. These are stress scores from a bunch of students. You've got an 8, a 7, a 4, a 10. I mean, looking at it like this, it's completely useless, right? It's just noise. But trust me, there is a story buried in there, and we're going to find it.
And that's the big question, isn't it? How do we go from this chaotic mess of clues and turn it into something that actually makes sense? How do we become data detectives?
Well, the first step in any investigation is just to face the facts. And the fact is, what we're starting with is, well, it's a mess.
You know, think about it like this. If you dump 1,000 puzzle pieces on a table, you can't see the picture, right? You just see a pile of cardboard. It's the exact same thing with raw data. Staring at the scores doesn't give you any idea of the bigger picture. No patterns, no story, nothing.
So, how do we start to clean up this mess? Well, like any good detective, the very first thing you do is you get your evidence organized.
And our number one tool for this is the frequency table. It sounds fancy, but it's not. All it does is count how many times each number shows up. That's it. It's so simple, but it is an absolutely crucial first step to start seeing what's really going on.
And making one is so easy. First, you just list out all the possible scores. So for us, that's every number from 0 to 10. Then you just go through your messy list one by one and make a little tally mark for each score. And finally, you just count up the tallies. It's that simple.
And this is literally what it looks like in practice. You take a number from the list, say a 4, and you put a little tally mark next to the number 4. You see an 8, you put a tally next to the 8. We are just sorting our puzzle pieces into piles. And boom, look at that. This is what we get. All of a sudden, there's order. We can see, instantly, that only one person had a stress level of 0, but 7 people, the biggest group by far, reported a 7. The story is already starting to emerge from the noise.
Okay, so our clues are all organized. What does a detective do next? They start to sketch out the scene to get a visual feel for what happened.
Because, let's be honest, as helpful as that table is, our brains are just wired for visuals. A picture can tell the story in a split second. So, that's what we're going to do. We're going to turn our table into a graph.
Now, check this out. There are two main kinds of graphs we'd use. Over on the left, we have a histogram, which is what we're using for our stress scores. And on the right, you see a bar graph, which you'd use for separate categories, like cat person or dog person. Just looking at them, can you spot the one big visual difference? So here's the deal, and this is a really key point. In a histogram, the bars are all touching. They're snuggled up right next to each other. That's because they're showing a continuous range of numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3. But in a bar graph, see those gaps? The bars have spaces because each one is a totally separate group. It's a small detail, but it tells you a ton about the kind of data you're looking at.
Okay, we've got our sketch of the scene. Now for the really fun part, reading it. We're going to look for patterns in the overall shape of our graph.
First thing you look for, how many main peaks are there? Think of it like a mountain range. If you see one big mountain, we call that unimodal. If you see two clear peaks, we call it bimodal. Seeing two peaks might be a clue that you've actually got two different groups mixed into your data. Next up, is the shape symmetrical? Like a nice, perfect bell? Or is it lopsided? We call that skewed. And the direction of the tail, that long, flat part, tells you where all the rare, extreme scores are hanging out. And here's a perfect real-world example of why this happens. Imagine you give a class a super easy test. What happens? Almost everybody aces it, right? So all the scores get bunched up at the top. We call that a ceiling effect. And that forces the few people who got lower scores to form this long tail stretching out to the left. Just by looking at the shape, you can tell the test was probably way too easy. How cool is that?
So let's put it all together. After all this detective work, what's the verdict? What story did we actually find in those stress scores?
I mean, that really says it all. We have actually completed the journey. We started with what was basically gibberish,
And with just a few logical steps, we turned it into a clear visual story that anyone can understand at a glance.
And this right here, this is the playbook. It's not magic, it's just a method that you can use over and over. You start with the raw clues, you organize them with a frequency table, you sketch it out with a histogram, and then you read the shape to solve the mystery. Anyone can do this.
And here it is, the final reveal. The story of our stress data is now totally clear. You can just see it. Most of the students are feeling stress levels around a 7 or an 8. The scores are all piled up on the high end, with this long tail stretching down to the low end. The feeling in that room was high stress, not low stress. That's the story. That's what was hiding in the numbers all along.
So really, the biggest thing to take away from all this is that every single graph out there is telling a story. And now, you've got the basic detective kit to start reading them. So my final question for you is, what stories are out there waiting for you to uncover?